Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 370 of the Embody Podcast. Today, we are geeking out on human design, and I am so excited about this. We bring up human design on the podcast all the time. I know some of you are really into it. Some of you are like, what the hell are they talking about when we bring this up? And we have today on the show one of my favorite people to follow and learn from when it comes to human design, Erin Claire Jones. And so Erin Claire Jones is all about bringing human design into your life as a tool that you could use to better understand ourselves, both at home and at work, and then bringing your partner and your peers, if you have a partner, your peers into the fold, giving you language using human design to understand one another as well. And this has always been one of my favorite things about any of these things, whether it's human design, astrology, things like the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, and all these systems have different nuances and are put together and come from different places. But the more we can understand and embrace and accept that we are built so uniquely, the more we can also understand and accept that we're just not going to always get each other. And we can look at these things as, we're just built, I'm built a certain way, someone else is built a certain way, and you're getting in that frame of like how we're built or how we're wired. So rather than making ourselves bad or wrong, or rather than taking like conflicts so personally, or making people wrong or bad for being different from us, we could be like, when we have more context. And human design is one of my favorite tools to put our own uniquenesses and other people's uniquenesses into context. So this is a super fun, super informative episode today, and I hope you love it. The show notes for anything that we talked about, you can find links, are at untameyourself.com/370. This is a great episode to share, so please share it up all over the socials or whatever way you like to share things with people in your life. And that's it. Let's get into it. Oh my goodness. So it's been like years since I've had like a real nitty gritty human design conversation. And we have Erin Claire Jones with us today. How are you?
I'm doing so great. Thank you so much for having me.
Listen, I tell so many people to follow you on Instagram. I can guarantee you there are some people who are so friggin' pumped for this conversation right now. And I was telling Erin before we started recording, and I'm like, listen, this is going to be a really self-serving conversation. But I promise there will be value for everyone, no matter what your human design is. So, all right, first question before we get into human design stuff that I've been asking everyone in this like season of the podcast is, how is your heart today?
Oh my, well, I was just sharing with you that I got married on Sunday. And so my heart feels very overflowing. I feel like I'm very much still kind of like riding this amazing high in a way that like isn't the most grounded. I'm just like jittery with excitement.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm just enjoying and like relishing in this moment because I know like it will even out, and my feet will come back. But for now, it's just fun.
I love, my feet will come back. That's so cute. Yes, you float for as long as you can. That's amazing. Oh my God. So people listening to this podcast have certainly heard me reference human design. I mean, a lot of people are into it. Like I share your stuff. I share some other people's stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
AC Brown was on the podcast. We didn't get too much into human design. And I had Chaitan Parkin on so many years ago.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, because one of his books was kind of like my first gateway. I've been like geeking out on human design since like 2015. And that's how long it's taken me to even get like armchair level understanding.
It's so deep. That's amazing. I love that you've been kind of like in that world since 2015. That's before a lot of people.
And what I love to like look up the charts of my friends. And I've especially found, and this will be a fun place to start, that even though it's like the first thing you see when you look up your chart is like your type, right? Like I'm a manifesting generator, I'm a projector, whatever. I find that when it comes to compatibility with people, it's the profile that actually lets you know more so if there's going to be like compatibility or not, or where non-compatibilities might be. That's just my theory and hypothesis. What am I making that up? Is that what you find, or anything you want to refine on that?
Well, I'm so curious to hear your experience on it. I think in general, our profiles can be very harmonious and supportive of each other, or just like incredibly different, or like in dissonance, we call it. And so like, I think understanding the difference in the profile is so profound and kind of helping you understand how to relate to each other. Mm-hmm. I'm like never want to say that like some people like just can't be together. I just don't find that's like a very useful approach, which I know is not what you're saying. But I do think that like, even when I just look at me and my partner, like our profiles are so different. I'm a 6'2" like you, he's a 1'3", and we may talk about that, but he's like so in the details and wants to like understand everything. And like, I just don't always have that same desire. And it's been so powerful to just have a language to kind of understand how differently we operate. So yes, I think a lot is revealed through compatibility, but I just never want it to feel like it limits people and you like can't date somebody that doesn't have a certain thing.
Yes, yes. And I don't even just mean compatibility in dating. And I actually really appreciate this about you. I read through, for those of you listening, if you don't follow Erin, it's at Erin Claire Jones, Claire, on Instagram. And she does these epic Q&As a couple times a week, it feels like, or maybe once, but it's just so thorough. It feels like it goes on for a long time. And I love how you really do emphasize that anyone can be compatible. So when I say incompatible, I mean the dissonance that you're talking about. Yep. Like these things might just be challenging,
100%.
but it's no reason not to like be in relationship or connection or work with or hire or, you know, whatever, another person, but just be aware that there could probably be some friction because of that.
Absolutely. And it's just like some things might require more work, you know? And so that's why it's so important to kind of understand that. So it's like, I choose that. And I also like love what you said about profile, because I think that if you share a profile with somebody or it's very similar, there's often more resonance than if you share a type, you know? So it's just like, there's a level of kind of like resonance and understanding. So I think that like, I love 6'2s. I'm always drawn to 6'2s. You know, I find my partner so drawn to all the 1'3s, you know, it's just like, it's so funny. And again, like I definitely have way more in my life, but I think that like, there's some kind of comfort in people that have a similar profile than with you.
Yeah. And you know what? I started to realize that when I started to notice just the diversity in my manifesting generator friends, because I'm a manifesting generator. And I'm like my friend Jada Selner, for example, she's a manifesting generator. We are so different, but we're also 6'2s, which is really funny. So I know like no matter what, there's going to be diversity, but like you're saying, like there are these kind of commonalities or things that you'll be drawn to, or like, I just know I can so relax. It's not even just 6'2s, to be quite honest. It's people with a 6 in the profile.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. If you share a number.
Yeah. So anyway, for anyone, let's define that like a little bit for person. Profile, what does that actually mean? If someone's listening to this and they're like, what are they talking about?
Yeah. So our profile in human design speaks to kind of how we're designed to best manifest our purpose, but it can help us in so many ways, like how we best market, what we need in a relationship. Like it actually like there's so much impact that the profile can have. In human design, there are 12 different profiles and they're made up of like kind of 6 different qualities, 6 different potential numbers. So it's like a 1-3, a 6-2, a 2-4. Do you want me to briefly go through those 6 numbers? Would that be useful? Okay.
I mean, it would, but I feel like that's something that people could look up and glean plenty of information from on your Instagram and in your stories. So I don't really want to spend podcast time there.
Perfect.
But thank you.
I'm going with your flow. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, if there's things that people could like very easily look up, let's get into like juicier stuff. So what were you going to say though?
I don't remember, but I think that I was going to say, if people do want to look up their design, they can go to erinclairejones.com/lookup if you want to kind of see what your profile number is.
Oh, good. Great. Yeah. One of the things as a 6'2", so that, I mean, there's different names for it, but the 6 is called the role model. The 2 is called the hermit. And someone explained to me, which you might do a better job of this, that basically the first number is going to be something that's like pretty obvious to you when you see it. And then the second number might be something like surprising to you about yourself. And I'm such an extrovert. It was surprising to me later in life to be like, oh, I need hella time to myself.
Mm-hmm. So basically the first number in your profile is a more conscious aspect of yourself. It's basically who you see yourself as. And there are going to be lots of aspects in your design that fall into that. And the second number is the thing that is unconscious. It's what other people perceive in you, but like you might not always see. And the 2, as you know, is not just about being a hermit, but it's about like, just like bringing this like genius to whatever it is that you do. And I think you bring up a good reminder in that just because you're a hermit does not mean that you're meant to hermit all the time. So
Yeah.
much of our profile is kind of knowing how to find balance between the two. And sometimes they can feel opposite. And it's just because we need to find balance. And so for you, like you're designed to be like out there teaching and like offering guidance and being a real authority. And also you desperately need time to kind of pull away and be in your own space and be in your own flow, because that's like where your natural gifts kind of are cultivated the most. So it's kind of not falling too far in one, but kind of finding balance between the two.
Yeah. And I love this. And this is one of the reasons I'm obsessed with human design, low key or not low key at all, is because just understanding how different we all are, how we're built differently. Because one of the things I notice, and I guess it's that like the natural authority piece, is that people always want to put me on a pedestal or like compare themselves or be like, well, you're so, and I'm like, do not, unless you're a 6'2" or unless you're this, like, don't compare yourself. Like it's so apples and oranges. I mean, and that's literally how we all are, no matter our human design or anything. But I love having something to point to be like, are you like this? Then it's useless for you.
100%, especially as a manifesting generator. I think sometimes people can like perceive that and be like, how do they do so much? Like, how do they show up with so much charisma and power and energy? And it's just like the right people for you are not the ones that are like threatened by it or comparing themselves to it, but like actually just feel expanded by it. Like I love my manifesting generator friends, and I often just witness them like, wow, you're kind of superhuman. I am not going to try to keep up with you, but I love being around it. So
you're a projector, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I have so many projectors in my life. And I want to talk to you about this. One of the things I've noticed is I've noticed distinct differences. I'm going to use the language of evolved and unevolved, not in a condescending way. Evolved just means someone like pretty conscious and self-aware, actively engaging and like working on themselves. And unevolved just meaning someone who's not really self-aware and not really doing any work. I've noticed that the folks who are not really working on themselves at all, that are projectors, tend to be some of the most challenging people to be around, because they just managing the energy as a projector seems to be one of the absolute utmost important things, especially because our culture is certainly more built and honoring of the generator types who have more energy. Whereas the projectors, listen, some of the most powerhouse people I know are projectors. Totally. Yeah. They're just like in their zone, in their lane, doing their thing, and they take amazing care of themselves.
I'm so curious what feels the most challenging to be around, because I think like two pieces come up for me, where one, it's like when we're burnt out as projectors, like it's just kind of a disaster, like we just like really have to take really good care of ourselves to be at our best. But also as projectors, so much of our strategy is waiting to kind of be invited in to share. Like we see so much, we're just sharing because we want to share, and like no one's asking for it. It often can be a little bit annoying for people because they're like, I'm not looking for your guidance, but when they're ready for it, it's so powerful. So what feels the most challenging to be around when it feels like they're out of alignment in that way? Is it what they're sharing, or just like energetically how they're showing up?
Energetically how they're showing up. It's not the sharing. I actually haven't necessarily had that come up with projectors. It's more, I'll give you actually a great example. I dated someone once who was a projector, and I think he really misinterpreted the wait for the invitation thing and the like lower energy. Like somehow he interpreted it to mean I'm not built to work. I was like, pretty sure that's not what that means. And actually I was talking to a generator friend of mine this morning who's also a 6'2", and she was saying, yeah, like I find with some projectors, there's almost like this inclination towards martyrdom if they're not managing their energy well, but finding themselves like you still have to live life. Like even if you're burned out and you have a family or you have a job or you have whatever, you got to show up for these things.
I hear that, and it's really such a journey, because I think one of our biggest shadows as projectors is we just don't know when to stop. And so we just keep going and going and going, whether it's working or just extending ourselves in so many different ways to friends and all the people. And so it's just like really learning how to have a boundary and be like, let's stop, and it's been so helpful for me to have my partner who's a generator know this about my design, because like, I'll just, some days I'll be like, stop. Why are you still going? I'm like, that's an option. I could close my computer. Wonderful. I'm going to do that. Like, I just think that like the reminder is so helpful. Whereas for generators and manifesting generators, there is more of an innate sense of like, oh, my energy's gone. It's time to rest. I like use it all up. Whereas projectors, because we don't have that, we just keep going and going and going.
Yeah, that's I've never heard it put that way before. And I bet some of the projectors listening are going to be like, oh my God, never. So as a projector yourself, if that's not built in for you, how do you work towards, because this is something else that I love about human design. I don't want to lose my train of thought on this, but I want to give another example. I want to ask, as a projector, how do you develop some kind of internal boundary to know when to stop? So I want to ask that. But I want to tie it to, I have an open heart center. And of some of the things I've read, especially in your work, one of the things is it's so important for people with open heart to develop self-trust. Mm-hmm. And I laughed so hard because that's literally the bedrock of all my work. So that saying, like, you teach what you need to learn. I'm like, oh my God, I've just been creating the medicine I always needed. So I think this is a beautiful thing in human design too, of like, wherever you're kind of it's not a deficiency, but just something that is going to need
totally
some help. I don't know. You'll probably put it better. It's so amazing the ways how we can actually really excel in those 100%. Areas.
Exactly. And so, and that totally relates to the kind of projector creating boundary piece, because basically we will all have not all of us, but many of us will have areas that are white in our design, at least shapes that are white. And these are basically the areas that can take us the most off track, but also where we have the most to learn and then eventually teach from. And so for you with that open heart, like, your lesson is that there's nothing to prove, but you're also really here to kind of support other people in their journey towards like worthiness and self-trust and knowing there's nothing to prove. Similar, one of the biggest lessons for all of us as projectors, and actually manifestors and reflectors as well, is not knowing when to stop, and just going and going and going and not setting a clear boundary. And when we learn how to really kind of manage that, then we can actually help others know how to use their energy best, so kind of us learning how to do it supports like us helping others so much. I think in terms of my own boundary, like, it's not even internal. Like, I just have to like set very explicit boundaries on my schedule or I will keep going. Like, when I first started doing sessions, it was just like every moment that I could fit one in, I would. And now it's like, I do sessions 2 days a week, and like, I try to have a limit of like 3 sessions. Usually it's 4 a day, but like, I really try to like have very hard limits. I like have a hard limit for like when I stop work, I also like create time in between things. I have a limit for how many podcasts. So like, I just had to create real structure for myself to just give myself that kind of permission. And also, like, I've been really blessed with a partner that is so oriented towards giving me more space, because he's also my business partner. So I think he's so oriented towards like, how can we just create a business where you feel so much more flow and like, in some ways have like a little bit less day-to-day responsibility. And so it's a journey that we're on, but I think that like explicit structure has been the most helpful for me.
I love that. And it's so practical. I'm a Virgo too. I love practicality. I'm like, great. Give the people the most practical advice. You hear that, everyone? Boundaries and structure, my projector friends.
I know. Cause I will keep squeezing things in if I don't do that.
Yeah. And that really makes sense. Cause as a manifesting generator, it's real. When like the gas is when the tank is empty, the tank is empty. Yeah. And there's still like all the conditioning of being like, must hustle, whatever. And I'm like, no, that was enough for today. Mm-hmm. But it's also hilarious though, because as a manifesting generator, like me being like, oh, I barely did anything today is actually doing like 10 times more than a lot of people.
100%, which is why, and it's so funny. I had a manifesting generator client recently and she's like, Erin, I've gone through my like 7th assistant. I was like, okay, what's going on? Like something is obviously not fitting. She's like, no one can keep up. I was like, they are not meant to. The minute you expect them to, like the minute you'll be disappointed. And so it goes back to your point earlier, like the magic of human design is just reminding us of how different we are, whether it's in how we parent or partner or collaborate. And I think it kind of brings so much more empathy and understanding into those dynamics.
Oh my God. I'm so glad you brought this up. Team has been a mixed bag for me over the years. I've been like running my business for like 10 years. And I often have, this is something human design really helped me with, that exact thing, being like, okay, people aren't going to keep up or supposed to, it's interesting. I had someone on my team last year. I was so pumped because she was a manifesting generator. She couldn't keep up at all. Like I was shocked. I was like, does she have her birth time wrong? Because I'm getting real projector vibes from this person. I was like, so that was like, and again, that's just one thing in like the whole scope of a person,
Absolutely.
So I bring that up so anyone listening can know, if you're a manifesting generator right now and you're like, what are these bitches talking about? I don't have all this energy. I don't do all this stuff. You're not like a bad manifesting generator. But what I want to ask you, is that an indicator of people living out of alignment in other ways? Like when someone is kind of having an experience that's really not validating of how they're built, what's that usually due to?
I think so many things. I think often we're just conditioned to be things that we're not. And so, like, I think if you're a manifesting generator and you don't feel like you have access to kind of that powerful vitality, creativity, and life force, like there could, of course, be a health issue and some like external stuff that, is so specific to you. And honestly, so much of it is like not being lit up and excited by what you're doing.
Yes.
If you feel like you have been doing things you aren't enjoying, have you been like overextending yourself? Personally, work, like everything is just going to feel so depleting. You're going to feel so drained. And so most often when I sit with a manifesting generator and they're like, I feel so depleted, I don't feel like I have that energy. I'm like, are you excited by what you're doing? Like, are your boundaries strong? Are you spending time around people that light you up and doing work that lights you up? And they're like, absolutely not. And so I just think like in the smallest of ways, both for generators and manifesting generators, like creating a small bit of space every day or every week to kind of do the things that light you up will kind of get you more on that track to accessing that energy.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because that's actually something. This person was in a role. They had like taken on a bunch of things that they probably shouldn't have been doing. And so over the period of time, it really wasn't lighting them up. And they weren't speaking up about it either, which this is something that I've really learned as well. Like you were saying, that like kind of intimidating factor. I created, after the experience with that person, I created a feedback form for my team, because I'm like, listen, we can't fix anything we don't know about. And we have check-ins, we have meetings and stuff every single week. We're like, what's going on? Do you need any support? Do you feel like you're in your zone of genius? Like, how are we doing? And if someone doesn't say anything during that time, like we can't do anything about it. So I literally created a form. I'm like, listen, if you're nervous about speaking up, fill out the form. And then I will contact you and we can have a conversation. Because I'm like, how can I make it easier for people to speak up? I know there's a power dynamic, all these things, but I'm like, we have to be able to communicate the shit.
Mm-hmm. And this is also why it's so useful to know the designs of the people that you work with, because like some people might have really strong, powerful, impactful voices like some people might it might be a little more inconsistent. They don't like really feel comfortable sharing. So it just and it just helps us know how to kind of pull different people out, and some people might feel really comfortable in a group setting. Other people might feel really uncomfortable in that setting. So I love that, just like awareness of like, this might not work for everyone. What are some alternatives?
Yeah. And so human design is actually my favorite thing to use with team. I know there's like
100%.
all the assessments and all the things, and I'm like, nope, human design. And actually, two people on my team right now, my project manager, my community manager, the projectors. I send them your projector stuff all the time.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Especially the stuff about energy. I'm like, are you all taking care of yourselves this week?
But what a powerful way to feel supported. I think that like I remember my the last job I had before human design, they were the same. They're like, Erin, go take a vacation. Erin, go take rest. I was like, okay, I'll go do that. But like, it's just so nice to know that like, they're not expecting you to kind of consistently like just push all day long.
Totally.
And the team stuff is the most impactful. That's how I got into human design too. I just think that like it transforms the way that we work together. And I think it makes teams so much more efficient and effective.
Yeah. And then also sometimes where there's manifesting generator stuff, I send it to them and I'm like, yo, this is me. You know what I've had to really learn? I'm like, oh, this is me skipping steps. Like they'll be like, hey, did we talk about this? And I'm like, nope, that was me forgetting to inform you about the 20 steps I took and didn't let you know about.
Yeah. And instead of making yourself wrong, you're like, I'm super efficient. I see the fastest way to get somewhere. I will not handle every single step along the way. This is why I need you.
Yeah, we joke about it, and I love that. I love keeping lightness around, whoops, did it again, instead of being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, this will continue to happen because it's just how it is. And then it's kind of, have you ever heard this term Wabi-Sabi?
No.
It's a Japanese term. I think it essentially means like, the example I always remember was from Ariel Ford. And it's like, you can either be pissed off that your partner leaves the toothpaste like dripping on the bathroom counter, or you could look at it and be like, that's my guy, never puts the cap on the toothpaste. Like you can shift out of being agitated every morning to like just loving that he's kind of a slob,
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I kind of like to approach those things where like, yes, I know it's wildly inconvenient that I didn't tell you I made 7 decisions today and already got started on them, but that's me.
100%. And human design just like helps us love each other for that, because I often think so much tension comes, whether it's working or romantic, when we like want someone to be more similar to us or different than what they are. And I think the magic of human design is not actually about telling us anything new. It's about giving us a language and a framework to understand our differences. So we stop making each other wrong for them. And we also stop personalizing them. Like my partner and I, our designs are opposite in every single way. And like, I imagine we maybe would have figured some things out, but like having the language of human design is just like, yeah, okay. Like we're just not expecting similarity. And that's actually the magic.
Ooh, I have a question for you. So for people who want to bring this into their lives to have common shared language and reference points. It's like, I laugh so hard at these memes that are like, when people really like someone because they gave them their birth time.
I know, it's so good.
It's like, how long do we wait before we could be like, hi, do you know your place, time, and date of birth? Thanks.
I have it right now. Thank you.
Right now. Can you ask your mom? Thanks. How about you text your mom before the end of this date? Let me know. But some people are really shamey about, oh, is this bullshit or that thing or blah, blah. Is there anything you suggest for helping people kind of bring it up to others or present it in a way that might take some of that stigma that I think a lot of people have it more? Astrology is more common that people have heard of than human design, but similar because you need the same info. How do you help people like bring that up and integrate it into, their relationships or even their workplace?
Yes. I think one of the first pieces is just like knowing your own design and talking about that. You know what I mean? Like I learned all these things about myself and it really helped me in all these ways. Like I find so many partners like getting their blueprints or booking sessions because they're like, my partner's so in alignment now. And it's so cool to see. So I just think like sharing it from your own experience and not being like, it could do all these things for you, I think is a bit more accessible, but also like, honestly, like I work with so many skeptics. And so I think that I always try to remind people that like, it's actually not about whether it's true, it's about whether it's useful. And so I think when you introduce it to people, do you know what I mean? You're just like, take it or leave it. If it feels resonant, supportive, useful, let's roll with it. If it doesn't, throw it away. And I just think when I present it in that way, whether it's a team or, I mean, not my partner anymore, but like people are just like, tell me everything. Like, so I just think if it's not presented in a very dogmatic way and a really kind of like open way that can just kind of be playfully explored together, it might seem a lot more fun. And then I also think when you give them the option to just like not believe in it, you're like, just like, is it useful? I think they're like, okay, like I'm ready to learn, so because you kind of detach the kind of like rigidity around it.
Ooh, I love this emphasis on usefulness versus do you believe in it or not?
Totally.
Makes it very practical.
So practical. And I just feel like I always try to remind people, like, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. You know what I mean? Like, I'm giving you a language, take it or leave it. And my experience, as I imagine yours has been very similar. Everyone's like, resonates so much, tell me everything, And so I think even the most skeptical people, like the more they hear it because human design is so practical, I think that it just makes sense to them. And also you have that working for you because a lot of systems will offer this very jargony language that is really not practical. And I think the magic of human design is you'll give them stuff that they're like, oh yeah, really see that, where it's much more kind of specific to their day to day.
Yeah, I love that. I really also love the emphasis on having a language.
Yeah.
Okay. So when people are first getting into human design, it's so vast. It's literally such a rabbit hole, kind of like we were saying before. What are the things that you're like, listen, if you just pay attention to like this, and this, what are the things that you feel are like, listen, if this is all you ever paid attention to, you'd be good to go.
I think it really is probably type, strategy, authority, and profile. And so type, how you best use your energy, strategy, how you create the most aligned opportunities in yourself, and our authority, how you best make decisions, which is arguably the most important part of our designs. Like understanding and aligning with those three is absolutely transformative. Profile as another layer that is going to give you permission to kind of do business in life in a way that feels more authentic. There are so many other, and then I'm like, oh, and open centers, but like, I think starting with those four is really profound.
The open centers was really, really helpful for me. I think this was last year when I started getting into stuff and I came to your flow workshop. I was like, oh, and that we said it earlier, but I want to bring it back again because I'm so much of my embodiment work is also about helping people like alchemize and transmute the wound into the wisdom. And that's literally like what human design is like for, right? Conditioning, unconditioning, all that stuff. And so finding out like what were the qualities of the open centers and like what you said earlier, that's the place where we can be taken most off course, or we can literally become like masterful and even be able to teach from there. I was like, oh, because I remember when I first started learning human design, feeling like those things were going to be a weakness or a downfall without that other side of it. Yeah.
And I just feel like it's the journey that we're on in this life. Like, I think that a lot of traditional teachers talk about it as like where we're in school. And so
Yeah.
like, I think learning those areas is so powerful because it's really tempting to kind of let those areas like drive your decisions or drive how you show up, but they're actually never meant to drive your decisions or how you show up. It's meant to kind of be a place of like learning. And so I think for me, understanding like specifically my design is so much around like not being overzealous and overdoing, but also not trying to prove myself like you, a lesson you also carry, and like just kind of having that awareness and how I show up in day to day has transformed everything,
Yeah.
And so I think understanding those areas where you can get the most taken off track can feel confronting and can feel vulnerable, but the journey in terms of like knowing what those things are is so useful, because I feel like when we know what our shadow is, when it comes up, we can so much more quickly move out of it. And so
Oh my
again, it's just like giving us the language and the framework so that we can like have it in our awareness day to day, so it's not guiding us.
Totally. And one of the things that was so helpful for me and came in two different ways last year, understanding the open centers, that I have open head and open ajna, and being like, oh,
Yeah.
I am easily distracted,
And
period.
inspired. Yeah.
Yes. And inspired. Oh my God. I think life and people and so many things are amazing, but like,
Of course.
I
Yeah.
need to my freaking time. So that combined with the strategy of being like, cool, inspiring, but doesn't light you up. Like,
Totally.
calm down.
And have
And
you slept on
then
it?
that also came last year in October, actually right around this time. I started doing some ancestral healing work. And one of the first things we did was we were really paying attention to, okay, got to eliminate distractions. First, notice what your primary distractions are, the way I distract myself, whatever it is, Netflix, food, this, that, dating, whatever, because then I could really listen and then I could really hear like the ancestral guidance and wisdom and really start to cultivate that connection. And I was like, ooh. So I had like those two whammies in the summer. It's when I was starting to pay attention to the open centers. And I was like, is it the head or the ajna, the one that makes me, is it
The
the head?
distracted one?
The ideas
Head.
distract me, and the ajna is where I get super inspired.
So no, the head is the one where you can get distracted by every single idea that's coming to you. And the ajna, the mind, is basically the fact that you're meant to be very open-minded and kind of hold lots of different perspectives
That's
and
right.
not be super certain.
Oh, listen, let me tell you where that got me. I've actually been unhooking myself from some narratives big time this year, being like, oh, okay, so that was my ajna. Cool. I love this. I wrote this down what you said. So the open centers, think about the open centers like where you're in school. And I also love that too. I love metaphors, right? Because if you go to school long enough, you can get a PhD.
100%.
Amazing. You could also be in
and
kindergarten.
Totally. You know what I mean? And honestly, like, I do sessions with a lot of people that are like much older as well. And it's so interesting. And like age doesn't mean that you've evolved in all these ways. But, I'll often sit with people and they're just like, I recognize this. This was a lesson I was facing for my first 40 years. Like, I'm so happy to be in the wisdom now. So like, it can also just be very confirming of like, yes, I remember when I used to do that. And like, yes, I like moved through that so powerfully. And just to give like a small example, like you might have an open emotional center, which means that you might be like super empathic and it can be really overwhelming other people's emotions, but there's so much wisdom there. And I have a lot of friends with an open emotional center who are literally writing books on emotional intelligence because they've got such a gift for kind of being so tuned in to kind of the vast emotional experience. So like, just a reminder that like it can feel overwhelming. And also like, you've just got such a beautiful wisdom there that you can like use to teach and support other people like we're talking about.
I love this so much. Okay. You know what I really want to ask you about? Because I never get this. And I mean, listen, we just went from, okay, what's really practical to, I want to go down a rabbit hole that really is not the most essential thing. The frigging arrows.
I know everyone always wants to know about the arrows, which I love. And they're so useful and not always the first piece, but I'm down to go in the rabbit hole.
Okay, cool. So if you've ever looked at your human design chart, up near your head, there's arrows on either side, top and bottom arrows. This is where I actually do want you to just tell us what the friggin' arrows mean.
Oh my God, people are going to love this. I mean, the people that love human design will love this. Everyone else will be like, what are you talking about? So the arrows are so interesting. They speak to basically like how we best digest food, how we work in environments, and kind of how our minds work. And so we'll just kind of do a little circle around them just to give people a taste. So like, and basically when you have arrows facing left, it means that there's more of kind of like a strategic focus energy to that aspect of your design. If the arrows are facing right, there's kind of more of like a wide, receptive kind of receiving energy to that aspect of your design. And so when we look at the very top left arrow, it speaks to our digestion. And there are actually all these layers underneath those arrows that you can't even see when you first look your design up. And so for example, your arrow is facing left. It means that I actually wouldn't recommend, and as always, take it or leave it. I actually wouldn't recommend like fasting for you or going too long without eating. Like you've got such a fast brain and mind that keeping yourself like well fed and well nourished throughout the day is pretty essential. It doesn't mean that you need to have huge meals, of course, but like having like a snack before you have a meeting, like not getting on Zoom before you have breakfast, like having breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever works for you. Whereas if it's facing right, like it is for me, it's like fasting might feel really natural. Your eating can be a little bit more inconsistent. Like you might be hungry at 8 a.m. one day and then like 12 p.m. the next. So kind of not forcing rigidity. So does that resonate with you? The kind of the well-nourished, well-fed consistency in your
Totally.
digestion?
And I've noticed that, and especially I started doing Akashic Records readings almost 3 years ago now, especially on days when I'm doing readings, because, there are days when I've done up to like 7 or 8 readings in a day.
Ooh.
And like, listen, working in the Akashic field is different from like reading someone's astrology chart or human design chart, because it literally requires nothing of my mind, nothing whatsoever. All I have to do is listen and trust and be like, here's what your guides are saying. And it has literally nothing to do with me, which is one of the reasons why I love it. It's not entirely true that it has nothing to do with me, but on days when I have a lot of readings and a lot of calls, I'm like, I literally have to be eating. Like every time I have a break, I'm like, let me just get a little something.
Yeah. And it just like, again, it's like, it's just keeping yourself, like your brain well fed. You just might find when you are not doing that, like, it just like things aren't as clear. Maybe you're like having a like harder time processing and sharing.
Yeah. And then,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a deeper layer to that arrow, and I won't go into kind of all the details, but just to give people a taste of what it would be for you, is it also speaks to how we best digest food. So for you, you have what we call an open digestion. It means that like when you find a thing that you love, stick with it. Like I wouldn't actually recommend that you like diversify your meals every day unless you really feel inspired to. Like if you have a breakfast, stick with that breakfast. Like you might be inspired to change it seasonally 100%, but like you are picky. If you're traveling, bring the things that you love to eat. And also you're just so picky in terms of like taste, like things really have to taste good. So really honoring that.
Yes. It's so literally hilarious.
So we keep moving down.
Yeah. Quick break in the show, everybody, to let you know that applications are open for my 2022 Embodiment Specialist training. I am so excited about this training. It is like 7 or 8 years in the making. It is expanded beyond what was Wild Soul Movement teacher training since 2016. And this is really for anybody who feels the pull to graduate from doing basic level self-help, personal development, and spiritual work, and truly embody self-love, healing, and wholeness, so they can live soulful and soul-centered lives that contribute to collective healing and liberation, as well as people who are wanting to really integrate the light and the dark, who place a high value on kindness, generosity, integrity, humility, and reverence, who know that while we receive all kinds of gifts and talents and genius, we are the instruments, not the players. This is for people who want to prioritize embodying their divine nature in order to serve the human experience, as well for those who would like to incorporate embodiment work into their professional lives in some way, shape, or form, or just deepen their own practice. So if you want to learn more about the training, which starts in February 2022, head to untameyourself.com/specialist. There are some dates by which to apply if you need an extended payment plans. We have a couple different extended payment plans, and it's just going to be an incredible alchemical transformative experience. It's going to be a small, intimate group because I will also be mentoring and working with everyone one-on-one throughout the 13 months of the training. So again, really deep, really beautiful, really incredible experience. If you are interested, go to untameyourself.com/specialist, and I will be so excited to receive your application if you decide to submit one.
Okay, so then the bottom left arrow, and these are both kind of on the body side, kind of our brain and our body. And so the bottom left arrow speaks to both our environment, but also how we move our body. And so if an arrow is facing left, it means that it's good to have some like pretty consistent movement, like moving every day is really healthy for you. And also like the best environments for you are the ones that kind of like really stimulate you and like inspire your activity. And you kind of walk in, you just like have all this amazing energy. If an arrow is facing right, which it is for you, It doesn't mean that you shouldn't move every day, but like it just might be a little bit more in flow. It's not about like having rigidity and like this crazy
Totally.
discipline around your exercise. And actually the right environments for you are the ones where you kind of walk in and just feel calm. Where you're like, I can just like sit down and just like witness this whole thing go down. So
Yeah.
when you kind of walk into a gathering and kind of feel that calmness like set upon you, like it's really just an indicator it might be the right space for you.
So I forget whose system, maybe it was Jenna Zoe, calls that mountains.
Yeah. So that's a separate piece
Oh,
underneath it.
okay. Because that for me, like, if you could see my view, I don't know if you ever see my Instagram stories, but I'm like literally posting my view all the time because I'm like, this is ideal. Like, I need to be
Yes.
up. I can't be on the ground level.
Yes.
I hate a ground level because I
Yes.
need to see, and I need like this vastness. Like, if I can
Yes.
see out and have some perspective and kind of be able to survey what's going on, that is actually what makes me feel calm. If I could
Oh, I
see
love
things.
that. Yeah, well, so the deeper layer of this, and this is not true for everyone that has it facing right or left, this is just kind of like the numbers underneath it, is that yours is mountains. And it basically means that like elevation is essential for you.
Yeah.
Like you might find that you don't thrive on the ground floor. Like having perspective and kind of being able to rise it above it all and just like see out is so healthy. And it doesn't mean, of course, that you've got to live on a mountain. Like we can find these environments wherever we are. It's more just the quality of like elevation.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of paying attention to like, how do I feel up high versus down low?
Totally. Like, it really, there's something, I'm not like super claustrophobic, but that is something I really noted when I discovered that. I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. I've lived in so many different places. And when I reflected on how I felt in the places that had an elevation aspect, I was like, oh, and the other thing actually isn't, I could be on the ground floor if the place itself was elevated. Like if I
Makes
actually
sense.
was at a higher elevation and I could be on the ground floor, but I'm still seeing out. So it's
I
not
love that
necessarily the
distinction.
ground floor thing as like, what do I see when I look out my windows? Like literally.
100%. And this is often why it's not like the first piece that we recommend diving into because people will take it very literally. Like
Yeah,
their environment is
yeah,
shores and like, I have
exactly.
got to move to the beach. And it's like, while that might be good for you, not necessarily, you know what I mean? Like it's just like an example of shores could be the porch, like where you're kind of like half inside, half outside. You're just kind of
Yeah.
in this transition point. And so like again, it's just like it's knowing that these things mean so much more beyond the word. And
Oh
so
my
it's just kind of
God.
tapping into where you can find that.
You know what this is making me think of? And like Malibu is on my mind today. When I lived in Malibu, there was this place called Sun Life Organics and they just opened in Miami.
I
And like
just went to one in
literally,
Austin.
oh
That
my
one.
God, it's so
Yeah.
freaking good. My favorite
So
smoothie
good.
is called the Mystic. That's what I've been kind of like chomping on over here while we're talking. And I would go there because it was in Point Doom. There was one in Point Doom in Malibu. And then I would go sit literally on my favorite point and just look out. And it's like the vastness, like that spaciousness. I'm like, oh my God, yes. And
Yeah.
there's also something, I don't know if this is indicated anywhere in human design. I love feeling small,
Mm,
not like in any kind of like degrading way, but just I think because like
perspective.
the manifesting generator, like I'm such a big energy. I love to be in the presence of something that's so much bigger than my energy could ever possibly
Mm,
be.
mm. I love that. I also love that as like an expression of the mountains, where it just like it is this kind of like elevation and just like connection to something so much bigger than you,
Yes. Yeah.
and not kind of just like being underneath it all or not have that perspective.
Yeah. Big time. Okay. So we did top left, bottom left. What are the right ones?
So the right ones are around more kind of how our mind works. And so the
Mm.
bottom right one is called our view. I'm actually so curious to hear about your perspective on this because you and I have the same view. And so if the arrow is facing right, it basically means kind of like your view and your perspective is often like you're just kind of perceiving things that other people aren't seeing. And you kind of can take this like wider view. If it's facing left, you kind of got this very focused energy. We're kind of like can zoom in on like these specific details. But there's a deeper layer that kind of speaks to what our kind of natural view is. And so for you, have you dug into this before? Do you know what yours is called? Probability. Have you heard
No,
this?
I've never heard this
So
before.
I know. So basically we all, and this is not true for everyone that is right or left, just a kind of reminder that like that's the first distinction. And then there are all these numbers underneath it that can kind of give us more color into it. And so basically we all have like an aligned way of looking out at the world and then kind of like a more distraction, and we're always going to go in between the two, but it's useful to be aware of them. So your aligned view is called probability, which means that like it's good for you to dream, but also it's really good for you to be practical, to
Mm.
not like kind of dream like in a really unreasonable way, like, and I've got the same one, whereas like the distraction for you is you get like so fantastical that you believe like everything is possible in a way that you kind of like lose touch with reality. And so it's good to kind of like have your feet on the ground, like, and I found this, like, I'm so gullible, I think that like I'm
Mm.
like so, believing everything. So just kind of like the grounding into that practicality and kind of noticing when I'm getting a little bit pulled off course there.
You know
Do
what? This
you
is
feel that?
so um where this gets me is dating.
Mm.
Because I see, and like, so there's also an element outside of human design that's just like, everyone has psychic gifts, whether they're tuned in, tapped in, using them, know how to use them or not is the variable, but we literally all have them. And I'm a seer, a sensor. Like the way I've been describing this for years is, have you ever seen a Terminator movie when the Terminator looks at someone and then there's just like this, like right up next to the person of like this. I kind of have that. Not in like the Terminator, like like that bulleted list, but there's just like all this information that I get.
Yeah.
And for many years, I didn't even realize I was doing it until people started pointing out to me like, hi, you're responding to things I haven't actually said to you. And I was like, sorry. Like literally I was like invading people's privacy without knowing because I didn't realize. Anyway, so but the other part of that is, and this goes to the idealism piece, I really see the best in people.
Which is also such a gift of the six. Just like seeing the possibility in everyone.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I did not know that. So I see the best in everyone. That doesn't mean that they're being the friggin' best.
100%.
So I've given so many unearned benefits of the doubt because of what I see. And for me, this is a little distinct from like falling in love with someone's potential.
Yeah.
Because it's not even potential. It's like, well, this is what they are, but they're not being it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is actually kind of a pain point for me sometimes, but you're right. It's also an incredible gift because when people have given permission and come to work with me, I'm like, woo, let's do this. Let's embody all that you are. How does it show up for you?
Oh my gosh, in so many small ways. And also just like the six piece, I love how you're sharing about it because like when you're in alignment with the six, it basically means that you see the possibility in everyone and you can like really support everyone and being their most authentic self. Whereas like being kind of more in the distraction or shadow of the six is being really pessimistic, or like still in the details or in your own journey that you're like not having that perspective. So it just feels like you're so owning that. And I love that. I think in terms of how it shows up for me, like, I mean, I'm just like, I unreasonably believe things are possible. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, even in the way that like, if you talk to my partner, it's just like, this is our plan. And basically like, I assume everything will go perfectly. You know what I mean? Whereas he's very much like, I'm going to leave a lot of room for error. Like things might not go perfectly. And I'm like, it's going to be perfect. We only need 5 minutes to do this. So I think that like, that's one, but even one, like, it was so funny. I'm not really a sports person, but we like went to like I'm even forgetting the sport, like maybe a football game last year with my partner's niece. And I bought a lottery ticket just for fun. I was so inspired. I was like, I'm just going to buy a lottery ticket. But I was like convinced, I was like, I'm definitely winning. You know what I mean? I was like, of course, and I'm just like, maybe I won't, like, I just feel like I really just like, I believe it's all possible, which is like so wonderful in so many ways. And also like, I think that I've got to like pull myself down at times, especially when I'm building a business and planning things to kind of do things in a more practical way and just be aware. And again, it goes back to like feet on the ground.
Oh my God, this is hilarious. So I know you do some like celebrity or some like popular thought leader profiles on your page. Have you done Brene Brown?
I have.
Is she a 6 too? Or does she have a 6? Do you remember? Huh?
You want me to check?
I do kind of want you to check, and I'll talk while you're checking. The reason why is I was laughing so hard. One of my challenges in team has been this exact thing. Like what I think is possible is absolutely obscene. It's just like the dream versus the reality is sometimes people have to reel me in. And I had started listening to Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead, literally when I was having this challenge with some people on my team. And one of the first things that she talks about in that book, I was just laughing so hard, is how her team had to be like, listen, you are not a good estimator of time. And what you think is possible in certain timeframes is just absolutely unreasonable. And when we tell you that, you feel like we're killing your dreams, but so we need to be able to find the middle ground. And I was like, yes, I very much relate to this. And it sounds like this is pointing to perhaps a 6 quality.
Totally. And it just like, and that view piece of just like it's all possible. She's a 2-4.
Oh, interesting.
So she's got the 2.
Okay. Maybe that's what, I mean, not that it matters, but I was just curious.
Yeah. And it's also interesting because like, if we're gonna get like technical, like you will have your profile, but she also could have a lot of sixes in her profile, which means like a lot of her gifts kind of have 6 equality,
Yeah.
so there are kind of like so many nuances kind of underneath those first pieces.
That's right. Like, listen, let me tell you, if you've ever looked up your chart and there's all these damn numbers on the side, I've never even ventured down what the hell all the numbers mean.
I just like, you don't need to, like, you absolutely can. But I think like the numbers, I really recommend people know their channels. And that's like in the strength section of your blueprint, because those are energies that are always consistent within you. That's like what makes you you. So like, I do really recommend diving into those. I think kind of understanding all those other numbers can be useful, especially when we look at partnerships. But I find that they get people like a little bit more in their head than anything else.
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
thing is, like, when you're living your design, you will express all your channels naturally. It's not because you try to make them happen that you make them happen. It's because you are just so aligned. Um, so the very last arrow is the top right arrow, and that kind of speaks to just like how strategic we're meant to be. And so kind of if you're at left, if it's facing left, it means that you kind of are more naturally strategic, can kind of bring this like plan, this focus, this power. If it's facing right, it's just like definitely not here to be strategic at all. And also, you might find that you don't always like know what you know until like people actually pull it out of you,
Yes.
and so kind of stepping back and taking that bigger view. So I know that I'm always so tempted to try to be strategic, but it's never worked for me. Whereas like you've got a little bit more of the capacity in your design to like be strategic and have that focus if you desire, like you still are absolutely meant to be surrendered in like every possible way, but you kind of have that capacity in your mind.
This is hilarious because truly every time I've tried to hire, I've wasted so much money on hiring like strategy people because I'm like, thanks, but I'm not going to do it.
Like, not the one that I want.
I was just telling someone this the other day. I never really got into like paid advertising, but I did try Facebook ads. It was like 2017, right? Because it was like, that was like the height of Facebook ads before we realized how shitty of a company Facebook was. And I could still morally stomach giving the money, which at this point, I don't care if it was the best advertising strategy there is. I'm not giving the money. But anyway, I hired a Facebook ads person. She fired me as a client because she kept being like, okay, we're gonna do this. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. No, that doesn't work. I was like, all right, stop hiring strategy people. I wasted literally thousands of dollars. It was hilarious. I think it's funny now. Thank you so much for going into the arrows. That was awesome. Like, I can't wait to re-listen to this and take notes.
Oh, I'm so glad.
You did mention that you do suggest, and it is in the blueprint. And by the way, y'all, when we say the blueprint, Erin does these epic blueprints for people. And I know she made a code for us. Yeah.
And it's going to be Wild Soul.
Wild Soul.
Wild Soul.
Right.
Yes.
Cool. So if you go to her website, and we'll put links to all this in the show notes, she'll give you a little discount on your blueprint. Super cool. What are the channels? What does that mean?
So channels are basically, they're going to be kind of like the fully colored lines in between two different shapes in your design, and think of them as like your innate strengths. They're like the things that make you you. So can I share just one of yours to give people a taste?
Sure.
So you got the channel moodiness, which is an intense name. But let me tell you what it means, and I've told you maybe before, maybe not, but like, it means that you have so much emotional depth, and it is very natural for you to have like emotional highs and lows and not always know why. And your emotions are very impactful. If you are in the mood, you can be like the most charming, magnetic person around. If you are not in the mood, it will be felt. And so one of the biggest lessons in your design is like honoring what you're in the mood for, and knowing that you set the emotional temperature of your space. And also that like your voice is very impactful. Like often these people are like performers and speakers and teachers, because like their words just like emotionally impact and move and touch other people. But again, it's about like being in the actual mood to do it, So I think my reminder for you is to like honor whatever mood you're in, and kind of know that the emotional highs and lows are very natural parts of your process. So your job is not to like try to prolong the highs or get out of the lows, but kind of just be present to where you are.
I feel so validated right now because years ago, without any human design context, I realized, especially when I'm not in a good mood, I was like, I'm not going to bring myself anywhere because I know I will. I know my energy is strong and I will affect the environment. I call it stank energy. If I bring my stank energy there, that's actually unkind. It's inconsiderate of me because it will affect everything around me.
100%. And it's not making it as like anything wrong with you. It's just like I set the emotional temperature of my space. So like I'll just know kind of when to be around others and when to hermit. And like I have a similar thing, I don't have that same channel, but I have a similar impact. And my partner just like is so sensitive to mine. And it's been so interesting to be like, I'm in a low, I'm going to spend time alone. You know what I mean? Not like I'm going to go socialize and be with the people. So just honoring that. And
Yeah.
one other one I would share, which I would say is so probably especially important in your team, is that like you've also got the strength of charisma. And
Mhm.
it means that you really thrive when you have space to be in your own creative flow. Like you can make so much happen so quickly. But if you're in an environment where you're being disrupted and interfered with all the time, it can be very frustrating and
Yeah.
you're so independent. So I would just kind of make sure that you carve out space, both like with romantic partners in the future if you want, or just in your team to just be like, I need space to be my own flow. Nobody mess with me. Let me do my thing. And like, I'll see you on the other side.
Yeah.
And so just kind of carving out and honoring that need. And because again, that interference can be frustrating.
Something we did many years ago. I have a project manager who's also a 6'2". Fucking one of the biggest she's a projector and a 6'2", but one of the biggest blessings of my life is that my project manager is a 6'2", because she can
Oh,
keep up. It is amazing. And I know she's not a manifesting generator, but she's killer with her energy.
mm-hmm.
And it's not that she can keep up. She gets me.
She
She
gets
has
it. Yeah.
always gotten me and been like, cool, do your thing. We literally created, for when we're hiring, a like how Elizabeth works document. So we could just let people know, like, this is how it is. And so if this works for you, cool. If it doesn't, it's not personal, but it won't work for us. To just like
So
literally
good.
create that thing that you just said, the space of like, I call it like my mystical flow. I'm like, you got to be down with like the mystical creative flow, pivoting, me changing my mind, like
Exactly.
totally. I like, it could be super frustrating for the wrong type of people, but if you're flexible and you're down with it and you're more about the impact of the work that we're doing, you'll love it here. But if you hate change or last minute shit, you will literally hate working with us.
Totally. And it could be so exciting. But I think I was going to say that. And I love that you said that for manifesting generators. It's like knowing that like they will shift direction, they will pivot, they will change their mind, and like trying on and letting go of things as part of their process. It doesn't make them flaky or like non-committal in any way. It's just
Totally.
like things are shifting and evolving, and like trusting what you have the energy for is exactly where you're meant to go, but also giving yourself permission to shift and change when the time calls for it.
You know what you're reminding me of? This is one of the other things I love about human design. There's like these just common, like old adages thing that are presented as things we should all be doing. For example, finish what you start.
Mm-hmm.
And again, for years without the human design context, I was like, y'all, that advice is not for everybody. Because,
100%.
and it also relates to the mood thing that we were just talking about. I'm like, if I forced myself to finish everything I started, I would be a miserable bitch and I would be making everyone around me miserable all the time. That is not advice for someone like me.
Another one would be trust your gut. Not all of us have access to that gut response.
Yes. I literally had created this yes, no truth practice many years ago. Then when I learned human design, I was like, hi, I need to edit this practice. It's really only going to work for emotional authority and sacral authority people.
100%, and it is like, so basically if you're a generator or manifesting generator, you do have a very powerful gut response. So you might find that when people give you options, it gives you a chance to tune into it. So if like Elizabeth and I were going out to dinner, I wouldn't ask Elizabeth, like, where do you want to go? Like, what do you want to do tonight? I'd be like, do you want to go out, cook at home? You want to make this or this? And you might be like, yep, nope, yep, nope. So I think like being given options and things to respond to drops you so immediately into your gut feeling.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then I felt bad. I was like, and the reason why though, is I was like, why is this practice so potent for some people? And other people were like, I don't feel anything. And I was like, you're not supposed to. Oh,
Totally.
this makes me, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm thinking about other adages that don't apply to all of us. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. That's probably like a fun series. Like,
one. I know, I'm like, it'd be a great post. I got to think about what those things are.
oh, please. Yeah. I have a lot of, so I told you I have a lot of projectors in my life. So I have a lot of splenic or splenic authority people in my life. And I'm always so fascinated. And I'm going to ask this question on behalf of my community, because I know so many of them have had this question. And so many of my clients have had splenic authority. Something I know that these people struggle with is even knowing what their intuition is.
Mm-hmm. So that's the question, right? Just how to connect to that.
Yeah.
So of all the different ways of making decisions in human design, the splenic is the absolute quietest. And so I recommend for these people more than anything else to just like have any practice that helps them quiet down and hear themselves. That could be nature, that could be time alone, that could be meditation, that could be kundalini, that could be dance. Like just sort of kind of see like what is the practice that helps me kind of hear this quiet voice? Because how the spleen usually shows up is like, it's a quiet knowing, it's a whisper that you hear, it's tingles, it's like an immediate resonance with something or not. I think one piece I'd add that most people often don't talk about is that if you are splenic, it means that you are deeply sensitive to other people's emotions. So like one of your splenic friends might be around you and you're super excited by something, and then they get like amplify your excitement. They're like, that's amazing, let's do it. And then they might go home and they're like, I'm actually not excited by that. But like Elizabeth's excitement was so infectious that I kind of got caught up in that. And so I do also kind of recommend them taking like some space and time away from other people to kind of really confirm the excitement or kind of the resonance that they're feeling is actually their own.
Okay. I love this because one of the things I have emotional authority. And one of the things I've had to really learn to do that was quite life changing for me was to sleep on things, if not give myself like up to 72 hours.
Yep.
And if after 72 hours, I still don't know, just treating that like a no.
Yep.
Be like, all right, I'm just going to leave it out. I'm going to give that one over to God. And if anything wants to come back, it can come back. But
it will. Yeah.
If I need to make a choice right now, it has to be a no because I have no choice. I have no distinct yes. And I love this because I have definitely had the experience of people being really excited and me getting excited that they were excited. And then later on, they're like, and not realizing that it was just my excitement was so contagious.
Yeah. I have a dear friend who like would spend time with another one of our dear friends who had this emotional piece that like we're talking about infected with their excitement, and she would like be with her and the friend would get her so amped up about something and she would like commit to all these things. And then she would go home and she'd be like, no, none of that was mine, you know? So it's just like important, like, and she was sacral, but like, it was just, it's so important to have that awareness, you know, because it can feel like a little bit confusing. So I think it's so useful to know these things. But I would say for the splenic people, just like space and time alone is going to be so nurturing. And it's such a powerful tool to kind of disconnect from the things that aren't yours.
Okay. I have another projector question, which again, I have so many projectors in my life. This is self-serving, even though I'm not one. The idea of like projectors projecting their energy, that's always baffled me. Like, what the hell does that actually mean? How does that work?
So, you know, we don't often talk about the projectors projecting their energy, but maybe you've heard that. I think the way that we talk about projector energy is that it's this very kind of like focused, penetrating energy. It's like basically projector energy like locks into whoever they're with, like in a way that they're like just like can make you feel so recognized, so seen in their presence. But if you're not ready for it, it can feel like a little bit too much. So like there's kind of an intensity to projector energy. And this is why it's so important to feel invited in as projectors, because like whether or not you're saying anything, people will like feel that intensity. And if they're not ready for it, it can feel like, whoa, I'm not ready for this. Like I have one example of this, but I remember meeting my friend's partner in Bali and like, I think my energy was just like a little bit intense where he would like literally back away. I was like, ooh, this is not the right connection here, you know? But I just think that like, I think that it's a good reminder as projectors, and I have not seen that happen lots of times in my life, but it's just that like the invitation is a tool to protect our energy and let us know who's actually kind of ready for that intensity and actually is like ready to feel seen in that way.
That is a great way of putting it. And I actually had a partner last year. He was a projector and I've literally never felt so seen. I was like,
Such a
damn.
gift.
But then with that like possibility thing, I was like, he gets me. He didn't actually get me. He just saw me. And I'm like, there's a difference. Like he couldn't actually be with what he was seeing. He could just see it accurately.
Yeah, there's so many layers to it, you know, and like, and again, it's just like what you want to feel is like, yeah, I feel like seen and known, and like, just like this person like really treasures me in all the ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. Anything you feel did we leave any loops open of all the different things? I know we bounced around a lot. That's the way that's how my conversations always
Such
are.
an MG vibe. Yeah.
It is. It is. You know, sometimes an interview will end, you know, because we'll like end the recording, but like say our goodbyes offline, not offline, but like when it's not recording, and people will be like, wow.
I love it. I feel like whenever I do interviews with MGs, I'm just like, because I'm such a fast talker anyways, that I feel like I love responding to things. So it's always so fun when that's the vibe.
Well, and that, I mean, I'm sure like some of your 6'2" comes through in that because it's like that natural. Oh, you know what? This reminds me of something that we kind of touched on. I found an open loop. One of the things I love when I'm teaching, so I just want to offer this for anyone who might be listening to us, is I love Q&A, because to be able to respond to things.
Oh yeah.
It's like this piece. I don't know what I know, or I don't know how I know. I don't know how I know this, but I do. And like that stuff can come out. So this is actually one of the reasons why I love interviewing people too.
I feel that. And I so feel that as a projector too. Like I much prefer to be like asked questions than just like be invited in to share my perspective and kind of like speak on the spot than like actually planning anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Planning things is challenging for me. I'd rather just like download it in the moment. Okay. So is there anything I didn't ask you that you're like, either it would be a great like bow on this conversation, or just that you like wished I would have asked you?
I mean, I feel like we like kind of, even though we bounced around, we actually ended up covering most of the important pieces, or at least kind of giving people a taste of that. I think what I like would want to close with is just that regardless of whether or not you choose to kind of dive into human design as a system, like it is such a powerful reminder, like we talked about at the beginning, that we are all different. And
Mhm.
so whether it is how we parent, how we collaborate, how we partner, it's just like really kind of trying on this idea that like everybody needs really different things. And the more we kind of like learn that and honor that, like the more flow we'll find often in our work and in our relationships.
I love this. Thank you. Is your website just your name? Is it erinclairejones.com?
ErinClaireJones.com.
Perfect. And it's at
Yes.
Erin Claire Jones on Instagram, which people, her Instagram is a whole university. I love it so much.
Love
It really
that.
is. And actually, I use you as an example for projectors all the time to be like,
Oh.
this is just such a great, she's like so masterful at showing, like letting
Mhm.
people see what she does so that they can then go invite her or not,
100%, and it just, and that's such a good reminder finally for projectors is that like when I first found out I had to wait for an invitation, I was like, this feels incredibly passive. How do I build a business? And I learned that like my job is to just make myself visible. And so like I just share often and always about like what I'm thinking about, what I'm inspired by, what I'm learning. And like that magnetizes the people to me, and that has worked so much better for me than pitching anyone ever.
1000%. Honestly, even as a manifesting generator, I'm like, I love that. That's great.
Totally. Way more fun.
Cool. All right, everyone, go get you some more Erin Claire Jones. If you are feeling this conversation, use the Wild Soul discount code if you want to get yourself a blueprint. And this was so fun. This was also, people listening sometimes like to know this is the first time we've ever actually like talked.
I know.
So much fun. So
But
easy.
you've been in the world, and also you had Ezzy on recently. Ezzy's a dear friend.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love
I was
that.
happy to see that. It's so lovely to connect with you. I feel like
Okay.
we've been in the same orbit for a long time. So this feels
Yeah.
fun.
So cool. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Share it up, and we'll talk to you later.